here's a walk around of my 1985 Dodge W-350. Did a full restoration about 5 years ago down to the frame. Frame was powder coated, sandblasted. New paint, new body. Quick walk around here. Paint's about 5 years old. It's not new, but it still looks really good. There's a couple, you know, rock chips and little things here and there, but it's still in great shape. Other than that, let's start under the hood here. So this has a 12 valve out of a 95 second generation Dodge. It's P-pumped. The pump is set from the factory, I think at 175 horsepower. When I did the rebuild, I took the head off, had the valves ground and refreshed, and you know, head decked and everything. The top end's been gone through. I went through the bottom end, put new bearings, main bearings and crank bearings in it, and then resealed the whole engine. Stock injectors with I think it's a number 100 fuel plate in the pump, and then 4,000 RPM governor springs in the injection pump. This has onboard air through a York air compressor, and it's a standalone unit. You can see it just runs off of a second pulley on the alternator there. That runs the air suspension. There's just an air dryer here, an air chuck back there for tools, and then the air line goes down to like a 3-gallon tank underneath with and then the controls for the air suspension. The turbo is a HE351 VGT. It's off of a 06 and a half newer Dodge. It's an electronically controlled turbo. There's water going through the turbo housing just to cool the electronics. It's still, you know, oil lubricated as well, but the reason I chose this turbo is you can close it down all the way for an exhaust brake, and then you can close it down at idle and get a little faster spool. It is controlled with an Arduino based CAN bus controller that's programmed off of a manifold pressure sensor mostly. So I'll show you a little bit of that here in a second when we go inside. Mechanically it's sound. The motor had around 100,000 miles before I got it, and I went through and had the rings and pistons all checked and honed and gone over. It does have a bigger radiator. The radiator is out of a second generation Dodge, radiator and intercooler. I've had a couple first gens, and when you start pulling much with them, they don't have as big enough radiator to keep cool. So that's one thing I wanted to do with this one, is put a bigger radiator. So it's got a nice big radiator. It's wider, holds more fluid, and then I'll show you that real quick. And then, like I said, a bigger intercooler as well. This isn't a custom aluminum fan shroud. I did 2 electric fans, and they're ran off of a Dakota Digital fan controller. And then it's kind of hard to see, but the intercooler stuffed in there too, an AC condenser in front of it. So there is a 5-speed manual transmission, NV4500. It's out of a 98 and newer Dodge. It has a, can't really see it, but it has a tag on the side. It was recently rebuilt before I got it at 6 States. That's a place, a kind of a tractor supply place here locally. But here's my air suspension. So I kind of robbed the idea from Kelderman. They don't make a kit for this, so I built my own. It's bolt on. It bolts onto the frame. This is the upper airbag mount that goes across both sides of the frame. The upper control arm uses the original front leaf spring mount. The lower control arm mounts to this plate right in front of it, which is pinch bolted to the frame. I don't like welding to frames when you don't have to. With any movement and flexing and twisting of the frames, you eventually get stress cracks. So, and then there's a track bar up above the axle. You can see that keeps the axle centered under the truck. So That's all done out of 3/8 plate. Nice and beefy. And then there is a gooseneck 5th wheel hitch in the center there. I haven't used it much. I've only pulled like a 5th wheel trailer a couple times, so works great though. Yeah, that's pretty much the outside. And the axles are out of a 91.5 Dodge. They're 307 gear ratio. I wanted a higher gear ratio for highway speeds, so you're not revving so high, going 65, 70, 80 down the freeway.